Welcome to How You An Adjuster. My name is Curtis Horge, a licensed and abundant public insurance adjuster. We're here with another show with information you need to know. This is about the appraisal process, and my special guest specializes in appraisals, so stay tuned. Welcome to How You An Adjuster. My name is Curtis Horge, and today I have a special guest, my friend, Mr. Brian Haden of Haden Claims Services, who specialize in appraisals. The appraisal process has been going on for years and years through insurance claims, and Brian specializes in that. But Brian, before we talk about the appraisal process, let's hear a little bit of background about you and how you come about.
Yeah, Curtis, thanks for having me on. Special to be here. It's been a while. I know we've been in touch and known each other for years, but I haven't been able to be a part of this. So thank you for the opportunity. So I got started in this lovely industry in 1998. Was pulled out of the fire service as an arson investigator by State Farm SIU to go join State Farm SIU and investigate claims, both fraudulent, non-fraudulent, and so yeah, that's my short entry into how I got started in the business. And so worked for State Farm for about 8.5 years. Then went to become an IA for Katrina. Did that for quite some time. Still carry an IA license technically. Did that from about 2006 to 2010, and then became a public adjuster in 2010. So I started off on the staff side, then went independent. And as an independent, I did a whole lot of expert work on both plaintiff and defense sides, and then opened up my PA shop as a public adjuster. And really, the appraisal process took a big leap after the 04-05 hurricanes in Florida. I started to take off. And so from that point forward, I've done a lot of appraisals, taught the classes, a lot of umpire work. I've been involved in over 3,500 appraisals in one facet or another on both sides, representing policyholders and carriers and as an umpire. So with all of that, it has become a niche that I seem to just have kind of fallen into. It wasn't something I looked at trying to jump into necessarily, but it just kind of fell where it did. And so, yeah, so I've been doing that a long time.
Man, that is awesome. So would you say you only do appraisals, or you do other types of adjusting, or just?
No, I definitely still do public adjusting. So I am still involved in public adjusting. Lots of mediations, arbitrations, expert witness work, and whatnot. Trying to get it done and settle claims.
Okay, something I thought about before we started the show. You work for State Farm. Were you ever a field adjuster in State Farm?
Yes. As an SIU adjuster, I was a field adjuster.
Have you ever run into each other, me and you, in the field?
No.
We did?
No, we did not.
Oh, we didn't. Okay, because I'm like, I think I remember you. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, other than if it were down in Florida, which, man, back in 04-05, when I was down there in Florida running SIU, I could have, we may have, but man, it definitely.
I never worked in Florida, so it wouldn't be me. I just kind of remember you. I guess I've been knowing you so long as a public adjuster, just kind of ring a bell, but then go back and talk about the history with companies. Like, did I meet this guy? And did we ever run in together?
No.
Well, I'm glad I didn't, Brian. How about that?
Yeah, exactly. No, listen, man, I handled Washington, D.C., if that gives you any, for State Farm as their staff SIU. So if that gives you any kind of indication as to where I was and what I was dealing with, yeah. So
that's awesome, man. I want you also one of the past presidents of TAPI. I want to mention that.
I am.
Great serving under your leadership. You had a great pass when you went through, and you're nice, one of the past presidents like me. And I want to ask you about briefly. So most insureds don't know what the appraisal process is. All they know, they have a claim, they file a claim with their insurance company. They wait for the adjuster, and the adjuster don't pay exactly what they think they should pay. What do? I mean, tell them more about the appraisal process. How do you explain the appraisal process to consumers?
Sure, you bet. And I'll give a little bit of a brief background as to how the appraisal process started, and then we'll kind of catch it up to today, which is significantly different than what it used to be. So the appraisal provision was put into the insurance policies as an alternative dispute resolution mechanism, meaning, to try to avoid litigation costs for both sides. They wanted to put in this provision that allowed parties to hopefully settle the differences without having to go legal. That was put in under the original New York fire policy back in the early 1900s, and has remained in the majority of policies until today. Probably it is still in the majority of the policies, but it has significantly changed.
Yeah.
So what used to be an easy resolution of a three-party panel, and two of the three having to agree as to the value of the loss. In the old days, even in the early 2000s, it was a pretty simple process. 2 out of 3 agreed to the value of a number. Insurance company paid it, then moved on. Subsequent to that, it has been used as a tool of leverage due to state laws in many states all over the country, and was really, in some cases, was abused and taken advantage of by either side. In certain states, it was used to policyholders' advantages to then generate a bunch of extra contractual fees and whatnot. So that kind of abused it. And then in certain states, it was used to allow the insurance companies to get out of being held accountable for bad faith, breach of contract, or problems within their claims handling process. So both sides have abused the appraisal process to where now, in its current environment, some insurance companies have gotten rid of the appraisal process altogether and moved it to a more costly and time-consuming alternative dispute resolution mechanism known as arbitration. And that is generally out of New York under New York law, so it's not favorable for other states and policyholders.
Let me just interject on that part, because most of those insurance companies want you to go and do this arbitration in New York and not your state you're in. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's what I was getting to. Absolutely. It is. You are correct.
Arbitrate.
It is. You got to go to New York. You got to hire attorneys. You've got to get all your experts and witnesses there to New York. And so it is done, with the intent to cost a lot of money and a lot of time in order to make that happen. And so the arbitration provision at the moment, as the way it sits, is not favorable to a policyholder for a resolution mechanism. So the appraisal provision that now stands in a large majority, but not all of the policies, what used to be 3, 4, 5 sentences long is now pages long in some cases of an agreement as to how the appraisal process is going to work, who the parties may or may not be, how everything is going to play out. And so it has, taken away the ability. No, let me back up. In an effort to try to reduce the abuse from both sides in the appraisal process, the lawyers got involved and, kind of hijacked that. And now we've got this, 3, 4, 6 page long appraisal mechanism that is super challenging and difficult to deal with and manage, and doesn't necessarily resolve the claim any faster or better than some of the other mechanisms available. So appraisal has certainly changed in the last 20 years that I've been doing appraisals significantly. But it does still remain out there as a opportunity for policyholders and insurance companies to try and resolve the dispute over the value of the loss as quickly as possible.
Exactly. I remember Renee Sigmund, I think she was with Merlin at the time. She got on the law firm now, but she mentioned something about in one of the classes at Tapia. She mentioned that if they have that 3-page thing with the appraisal, she said, stay away from that. It's just not. What are the to you? What are the downfall of jumping into an appraisal with 3 or 4 pages inside the policy. Like you said, it's a lot of, proving who can be qualified to do it. And so what is like the hardest thing in dealing with one of those type of appraisals where it's got 3 pages explaining the appraisal process?
Sure. Well, very similar to the rest of the insurance policy where, it gives somebody some benefits and then it removes benefits and then it provides benefits back in some cases under a limited, application. The appraisal process has kind of turned into that. And so that 3+ page appraisal provision now attempts to guide the appraisal process in a way that all parties can participate and they know what's going to happen. The problem is that in creating such a long appraisal provision, they unnecessarily created hurdles for the appraisal process to be done in a timely manner, and a B, in a smooth manner, and C, with the ability to do it without contradicting or interference of that 3-page process. And that's the challenge. It's hard for the appraisal panel in some cases to go out and do what they're supposed to do without some party on either side complaining that the appraisal panel somehow overstepped the bounds of this 3 to 6 page appraisal provision. And therefore the appraisal is now no longer valid. And we're going to go through this whole song and dance again. That's the challenge of these really long appraisal provisions.
That is very unfortunate. All these policies are written very ambiguously, written by lawyers, so they're very hard to read, hard to understand. And when they add something to the policies, normally taking away something from the property owner, it's adding more protection to the insurance companies. That's just the way it is. It's a business, so they protect their interests. And so I've seen that. I hadn't done one with the 3 or 4 page. I've done some with the basic one that says, if you and your adjuster don't agree on the claim, you can hire an appraisal. They can hire an appraiser. Those two will come out and try to, come to an agreement. If they can't come to an agreement, they go to an umpire. An umpire will settle with one or the other and say, any two out of the 3, like you said, agree on the amount of loss, then that binds the loss. I mean, you can't go up on as far as how much the loss is because 2 parties said the amount is this much. That's what it is. Even if you go to attorney after that, you can't increase the amount of the loss because 2 parties said this what the amount is the amount of loss. But attorneys always say bring it to them first because they have more leverage, I guess, on the legal side. They sometimes are called by the judge to go to appraisal anyway. If you go to lawsuit, they say, well, the judge said they want us to go to appraisal first. So I've seen attorneys oversee appraisals in that aspect. I'll have one of these attorneys, and talk about that later. You know what I'm saying? But so in your professional opinion, what's better is if you got a major loss, and I got one more question after that. A major loss, what's better, litigation or appraisal?
Well, Curtis, you've been in this business long enough to know that it's kind of like saying no claim is exactly like another, and therefore you can't just give a straight answer. And I'd love to be able to, but I don't think that one is necessarily always better than the other. I believe that there are times when appraisal is absolutely right. I've got a couple on my desk right now, as a matter of fact, where scope was agreed to 100%, work's been done, and now there's just a difference as to whether or not they should have paid what Xactimate, the insurance company estimating platform said the cost was, or what the roofer said the cost was. And so that is kind of the truest of its, true nature of appraisal, right? Like same scope, no issue, and yet it's just a value of the cost, or I'm sorry, it's a dispute in the amount of the cost to do the job. Right. Ironically, that's exactly what the NFIP flood policy is over our appraisal, right? Like you have to have an agreed scope of work in order to go to appraisal. And so that being one of the biggest issues and challenges right now within the appraisal process on the property side, flood's had it in there for years. And that's its truest form of appraisal. But to get back to your question as to lit versus appraisal, man, there's just no one size fits all answer. I certainly have plenty of files of my own that, are not ripe for one reason or the other to go to appraisal. And so it needs to go to litigation. And I've got plenty that, have to go to appraisal because litigation, isn't really necessary. A claim may have been handled okay, and the only issue is the value of the loss and a couple of small things. So, it's hard to say, man. There's just no blanket answer, or I should say there's no one right answer for that. Each claim is different.
I respect that. Man, and I've asked this question before. How long does the process take?
Well, what it should take, it takes a lot longer in most cases than it should take. And originally, when appraisals were, I'm going back to the early 2000s, when appraisal was first kind of really being spun up as a sub industry, if you want to call it that, man, appraisals would be done within 3 months. It would be both guys named each other. We picked an umpire. We ran out to the site. More often than not, on site, agreed to a value, and then just had to come back and do the paperwork. And certainly if we didn't agree to a value on site, it was done within a couple of weeks. And so originally that entire appraisal process from start to finish would have taken less than 90 days. Now, man, you're lucky if you can get two appraisers out of this cottage industry that can actually go to a site within 90 days because of the volume of appraisals. And so unfortunately, there are appraisals that are out there that are taking 18 months to get the work done. And that's a problem. That really is a problem because that is not what appraisal was originally designed to be. It wasn't designed to be take it, super long and rack up these really high fee bills in order to settle. And so, I've got a problem with these, really long appraisals happening.
Awesome. Brian Haden, Haden Claims Services, appraisal expert, man. I like this guy. We wear hats together. He like a lot of hats. I like that too. He got better hats than me, but we're going to San Antonio on October 28th at the Embassy Suites for the Tapia Conference in San Antonio, Texas. So there's a great hat shop there, and I know you're probably going to visit it and see what they got down there and add a few to your collection like I am.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. I'll challenge you to a hat and buy you a cigar.
That sounds good, man. That sounds good. Brian, I want to thank you for being on the show, man. Thank you for all your expertise, man. Thank you for all you do for helping the property owners, man, and serving your communities and throughout the DFW and throughout the United States wherever you're working. Thank you for all you do, man. And I'm glad to be your friend, man. Glad to know you in the industry. And I appreciate you being on the show. And I want to thank you for coming on board, man.
Hey, likewise. And thank you for your service to Tapia and the policyholders as well, Curtis. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you very much for listening in. And I ask that you subscribe, like, and share, and hit that notification button. So when new content come out, you will be aware and you'll be informed of what's going on. This is for the consumers. So I want to tell y'all thank you and have a blessed day.